Alright, so begins one of my favorite series. It's called Deadpool and Cable on these collections, but really, the original series was called Cable Deadpool. Cable and Deadpool. So, we'll just jump right in. It starts off with a nice little refresher in the first issue, just to let you know who's Cable and who's Deadpool, and what their relations are in previous Marvel comics. But it starts off with something that I've considered now kind of a new iconic thing for Deadpool, which is him channel surfing, watching TV, waiting till he actually gets a call for a Merc job. Then, of course, he puts on the Deadpool mask and heads to the airport. He's actually hired by these cultists. I believe they're called the One World Church, or that's their plan to be called. And they're turning everyone blue to stop racism, I guess. And they're showing their way of everyone's equal, except of course, anytime you find a group where everyone's equal, it's always the leader is kind of still the leader and still has his or her own name, and nothing they say can be wrong, and like every cult. So they task Deadpool with stealing a formula, I guess disease or vial of some kind from a German pharmaceutical group called Sunic. So he agrees to take all the money and go do that. And then for a little while we're introduced to Cable, who is very overpowered with telekinetic powers and telepathic powers, and he's from the future, and he's just has so much, like he can read people's minds. It starts off introducing him with he realizes that the bellboy is actually a mutant, and refers that mutant to go talk to Charles Xavier, so for a safe haven. So it's an interesting introduction to Cable. Deadpool goes into that pharmaceutical place, guns a-blazing, and and Cable goes in a little more stealthily than Deadpool, and they both end up at the same point, and they're both there to steal this virus, and that's how they meet in this series. They've met before because they were both in X-Force, which I'm not going to be covering in this series because it's just not my thing. So in the next issue, Cable, of course, gets the upper hand, shoots Deadpool, leaves him down for a while. I think the virus, he has it, analyzes it, escapes. We cut to some college anarchists that stole the virus and are using it because they can manipulate because part of it is you can manipulate your face any way you want and look a certain way, and I think their plan is to do that because it's useful for espionage or whatever. But there's going to be some kind of a side effect. We're briefly introduced, I think, to Irene Merriweather, someone that works for the Daily Bugle that Cable is involved with in some way. We're not sure exactly how he knows her, but she's kind of she does research and stuff for him so that he can do his thing. They meet up and talk, and eventually Cable just shoots Deadpool again because he's got to go take care of stuff. Turns out that virus only lasts for so long, and that it starts melting your body and just gooifying people. So he's trying to track down the anarchists, and he's only able to save one of them, this girl who had taken it last, and he's so powerful telepathically or telekinetically that he can molecule by molecule pull the virus out of her body. Like, that's like on a cellular level, and that of course wears him out quite a bit, though. I mean, he can still do it, but it wears him out, and Deadpool of course gets the upper hand, shoots him in the head, steals the virus, and brings it back to the glorious blue people. Issue 3 continues the story. Cable is talking to a friend of his who is also someone that can do research for him on One World Church. Charles Xavier is floating around. Deadpool is using his telekinetic power to make Professor X able to walk around and have coffee with him. You can pull apart his entire house. We're really seeing just how crazily overpowered this guy is. Deadpool's learning more and more about this cult, and it's one of those situations where it's kind of like they might sort of have their heart in the right place, but you know, it's still kind of crazy and like, why blue? And so Cable is sort of infiltrating them secretly, making it so that none of them can see him. But apparently Deadpool knew he was there all along, and he was there watching them for 4 days, and they have a bit of a heart-to-heart, kind of like, so you really kind of believe this? And Deadpool's like, yeah, I think it's a good idea, and that's, like, and maybe there's some validity to it, but of course we know it's a cult. We're gonna find out what's really behind it, and we find out there's of course some kind of sacrifice of freedom, and they're gonna try to trick Cable into doing that, and Deadpool of course turns on him. So of course they gotta fight, and got a huge awesome splash page. In this series, I think every issue opens with some kind of splash page on like, yeah, well, we'll get to more of that, but so of course they gotta fight, duke it out. Meanwhile, everyone's turning blue, but it's doing something different to Cable because of his techno-organic structure. It's causing it to actually come apart, and it's actually going to start to do that to Deadpool as well, just like that virus did. It's going to start making him weaker and weaker, but we don't know about that just yet, I guess. Or maybe we kind of do. Yeah, we can see him coming apart and everything there. So meanwhile, they're all trying to do research and figure out what the hell's going on, and yeah, it's getting to a crazy point. At some point in their arguing, I think Deadpool finally agrees that he'll help, and what he needs to do is give some of his healing factor DNA to Cable, just so it can counteract the technovirus, which is now spreading. So, like, the thing about Cable is he has this virus, this techno-organic virus, but because he's a powerful telepath, he can use that to actually stop the technovirus from spreading. And that's, like, basically his whole life. But if he got the healing factor, that would be able to allow him to keep this technovirus at bay and counteract the thing. But of course, Deadpool starts melting. He's trying to crawl over to him, but looks like he's not gonna make it. So, with much struggle and crawling, or slurping, sliding, slithering, it looks like he's eventually going to make it there. We do have to cut the suspension by seeing a little bit of Cable's two researchers trying to figure out where he is and what's going on. Eventually Deadpool is able to get tiny, I think, a droplet of himself into Cable, and just in the shortest amount of time, he consumes them, vomits them up, and they're made whole again. And they're like, alright, fine, this cult is bad. Let's work together to stop them. So they have to go to the other location in Singapore, the other Sunic pharmaceutical lab that still has more of this virus, to go destroy it, and how they were planning on implementing it to the entire world, make the entire world this way. Cable takes this over, realizes that he can use this technology himself, and actually uses it himself to turn the entire world pink. Yep, he turns everyone pink. And informs them that it'll all be temporary. He then starts just flying around the world, lifting up chunks of hidden spaceship that was underwater, and starts compacting them together to create a giant island called there's Nick Fury but pink, to create this giant island that's going to be called Providence. And it's going to be his new sanctuary for building a new world, because I guess he does have faith that that there must be some people out there that want to see things change. And I think he ends up in a newsroom explaining everything he wants. Deadpool tries to stop him, and he changes everyone back from pink just to prove that he means no harm. And yeah, he and Deadpool, they find out because they had saved each other, they're now linked together. So anytime they try to teleport, they will teleport together. So if Cable tries to teleport somewhere, Deadpool's gonna show up with him, and vice versa. And then there's a fun little tag at the end because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. don't trust Cable at all, and so they're gonna send some people after him. So the first 6 issues really were one big story about that, the cult and church or whatever. But everything's still kind of a continuing story in this series, which I kind of like. But at the same time, you don't have to have read the first 6 to jump into number 7. But Deadpool's working hard for his money to steal something, and the cat shows up, who Deadpool's just a huge fan of, and really wants to see his cat tattoo. But he outmatches him and steals this device. Meanwhile, Cable has built this island and is becoming world famous. It's a floating island, Providence. It's somehow gravitationally floating up in the sky. They've had thousands of applicants for citizenship there, and it's just this weird utopia where so far there's been no murders, and it's just kind of it's kind of his political world that he wanted to create. Meanwhile, with Cable as president, Deadpool's trying to talk to Weasel to figure out who stole this thing. It turns out there's, I think, 2 parts that connect together. Actually, there's a third. He eventually finds out, yeah, there's the 2 parts that connect together, but there is a third, and they were really just trying to use, I think, Deadpool because he can body slide with Cable, and that's how S.H.I.E.L.D. is trying to get to him, because they still don't trust him at all, and so they send Six-Pack, which contains Domino, which is Cable's former lover. So that leads to some interesting stuff of these 3 devices. I believe, yeah, Deadpool does finally grab the third one, and I think he gives it to Cable. The X-Men are still on the scene. Yeah, I think I mentioned this already. There's been no murders in Providence. It's become this utopia, scientists and everything, and people advancing civilization. Six-Pack tries to stop Cable, but he's just so overpowered, bouncing their bullets back off. He can use his telepathy to put them in place and make them, I don't know, memorize the dictionary 100 times and stuff. He's almost too powerful. We saw him pulling a virus out of someone at a cellular level. It's insane. And the S.H.I.E.L.D. is having none of that. So they're out to get him. Issue 9 has some great stuff going on in it, where the Avengers actually the X-Men actually ask for help from Deadpool, and he picks an awesome costume to wear when he joins them temporarily. I believe that is the only time that he was ever technically an honorary X-Men. And he refers to himself as an X-Men constantly ever since that issue, which is always followed by someone saying, "You're not an X-Men." It's like, me and my fellow mutants, you're not a mutant. So in case you didn't know, Cable's father is actually Cyclops, and then Cyclops sent baby Cable, who had the techno-organic virus, to the future for when there would be a cure, and that's why Cable, his son, is older than him, but also some great distant time in the future. I don't think they ever actually say how far into the future he is, but Silver Surfer shows up to join the fight. They start trying to attack Providence. They're trying to take down whatever the gravitation... he's done nothing really wrong. They just don't trust someone that powerful as Cable. So they're trying to take down this... trying to take down Providence and and find where the gravitational stuff is going on. And at some point they figure out that it's not actually some kind of gravity mainframe, It's actually Cable's telekinetic power is so great that he is constantly focusing on lifting this entire country, this continent made out of sunken spaceships. And that's how powerful he is. But through a lot of this, he eventually decides he's too powerful, and the only way to get out of the situation is, and for people not to abuse him in his weakened state, is he asks Deadpool to essentially lobotomize him so that so that no one can abuse him, and he actually loses all of his powers by the end of the issue, and we'll have to find out next time what happens. So yeah, the first 10 issues of this are great. I didn't want to go. I'm sort of doing Deadpool in depth, but I didn't want to go too much into specifics because it's such a good series, and I kind of want you to read it. I've read through the entire series twice. That's how much I like it. But yeah, the first 10 issues just reminded me of how much fun it is. So I don't know if I even really want to keep score of how good this is, but like, I don't want to say 5 out of 5, but like, or 10 out of 10, but I reread this to do this series, and like, I was gonna just skim through. I was like, oh, I read it a year ago, but like, just the moment I turned to page 1, I was like, I have to reread this because this is one of my favorite Deadpool stories, like this whole series. But we'll have to cover a bunch more because it gets even more interesting as it goes. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay cuddly. Alright, so we continue on with issue 11. Very misleading cover where it looks like Domino and Deadpool are gonna fight. No, Domino's not in any position to fight. So we get to Deadpool's fighting some AIM agents because he needs to steal this little alien baby that has sort of technovirus or techno-organic alien stuff. There's a lot of babble, a lot of technical babble in these issues. We do find this weird thing where the animation seems to get a bit more cartoony, and we find out that they're actually inside Cable's mind. They're actually frozen in stasis with their guns aimed on him, and with sort of the last little bits of strength that he has, he's holding them safe inside of his mind. Of course, Deadpool is tracking down the Fixer, who's we find is a bit pervy in these couple issues. I think there's a point where, yeah, he's swimming in his pool. He's got like naked female Avengers that are painted on the inside of his pool and stuff. So they fight for a bit, but eventually the Fixer, he's like, "Stop! I need your help." And so the Fixer's gonna help him put the alien techno-organic baby to somehow fix Cable and have tons of exposition to explain how that makes sense. And as they're about to do it, they drop the baby. Actually, the baby is shot by Alex Hayden, Agent X. We thought we saw the last of him, but no. We have a little, we actually have one of his old intros where he's like, "Today I learned," kind of thing, with the like pencil paper loose leaf thing going on there. So splash page, of course. So intro, splash page, awesome stuff. They're Alex is half genetically with Deadpool, so they always are at each other's necks and stuff. Deadpool does get the better of him and goes back to save the alien, or pull the alien that's like already trying to attack the Fixer. There was a funny moment where Weasel's like, "What happened with What happened to Agent X? He's like, oh, you spelled out hi weasel with his intestines. I knew you'd peek. And it's just like such a Deadpool moment. I love that. So, and I also love the cartoony, like, this is what's inside, this lower res inside of Cable's mind. He eventually tells Domino, oh, by the way, if I die, you guys all die. Your brains will be destroyed. Luckily, Deadpool remembers that he hid Cable in Switzerland, so he's heading here. Yeah, you can see shots of, like, Domino making that stance that we saw on the cover of issue 11, but they're never, shooting at each other. Alex Hayden catches up, and I think they understand, hey, it's all just a misunderstanding thing. But they bring Cable back to life, but he is now without most of his telepathic powers, without, I think, any of his telekinetic powers, but he still plans on running and taking care of the island of Providence. And S.H.I.E.L.D., even though he has none of his powers, we know that Nick Fury still doesn't trust him. Issue 13 is exactly what I always like. Deadpool in a trench coat and fedora. So, first murder ever in Providence happens. Oh yes, splash page. Opens with a splash page. First murder ever. It's of a terrorist that was seeking refuge there, and they're trying to find out who killed him. This sets a bad precedent. Cable doesn't want anyone hurt. That's why he brought a terrorist there to hopefully teach people ways of hope and kindness, and people just can't seem to stand that. I don't know. So Deadpool's on the case of trying to find the murderer, but not really. He's going and embarrassing himself. He's getting into battles with Prester John, and somehow there's these moments where they're slowly kind of figuring out, like, the kind of person that might have committed this murder would have been able to have a footprint here and here, and he's like, oh, they'd have to just do it like this. And Deadpool doesn't, like, Deadpool's wondering, like, who could have done this murder? Someone that was able to jump onto this scaffolding like me. Someone who was able to leap over here. And then eventually he concludes, okay, the real question is, why did I kill this guy? So, like, Deadpool eventually concludes, it must have been him that did it. And it's leading the audience to believe that for the entire thing. So, in part 2, I think he runs away first because he's like realizes he killed him, and he wants to figure it out. People are, of course, after Deadpool, like Prester John, but at some point, and I think it is in this issue, we find out that for some reason Deadpool doesn't really remember ever being asked to kill this person, and Cable is kind of upset with him for doing it, and upset with more the nature of his character. But at the very end, we find out that Black Box may somehow be involved in convincing Deadpool, or the one that hired him, but somehow without him knowing it. So begins the first of the recap pages, in which they had sort of jokes and breaking the fourth wall to the audience, talking just to let you know what the story's been up to. We open with Deadpool killing some clowns, but really Black Box is just sort of testing him and trying to convince him to kill Cable, actually. What is the greatest threat to mankind? Why, it's Cable, of course, or he convinces him it's Cable. So, meanwhile, Cable is missing because of something that happened in, I think, New X-Force or X-Men number 6 or something like that. And they're trying to find him. They get this guy. He tried to teleport to find Cable, I think, and he wasn't able to do it. So someone had created this device that they'll be able to teleport with him, but there'll be a 3-minute delay. So they do that. Deadpool ends up in an alternate universe where Apocalypse is won, and he sees these alternate versions of superheroes like Spider-Man and all these people are now the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. But so he starts fighting 3 of them, and Siren's there to help. But suddenly we realize, wait a minute, where's the 4th horseman? And in this alternate dimension, Cable is the 4th horseman. Dun dun dun! Okay, so then in part 2, we continue on, and it's kind of just a fun issue of, like, they're fighting Cable in this dimension, and then they hop to another one, and this one's, like, super peaceful, and Deadpool's weapons get zapped because he's not supposed to have weapons in this world. It's a world where Cable truly has become the messiah that he believes himself to be, and it's really peaceful and annoying, and they don't like that, so Deadpool leaves. They go to a place, dimension, where the techno-organic virus of Cable has taken over the entire world, and that one gets even more dangerous. Deadpool almost gives into it, but then is able to resist. And then they go to a farmhouse where they find baby Cable, and it's kind of like, how? And Sinister is there, and he's taking care of baby Cable. No, isn't that cute? So that's baby Cable on the cover of issue 17. So, and Deadpool's nursing him. So there's another recap page, and it's talking about, by the way, the House of M is involved in a previous issue and stuff. But anyways, Sinister, it looks like they're going to fight. Deadpool still needed to pee from like 3 dimensions ago. He lets him go to the bathroom. They start talking like, so how'd you get a hold of baby Cable? And they just start catching up, and Sinister's actually kind of nice in this universe, living on a farmhouse, and Siren and whatever his name is show up and end up having dinner and genetically modified chicken where it's like 10 drumsticks per chicken, and it's actually pretty nice. He did drug them, though, it turns out, but it's only because he's so fascinated by these people from another world that he wants to do interesting experiments on them, and interesting experiments on little baby Cable. At some point, Deadpool is like, I can't let this baby Cable stay stuck in this universe with Sinister. Like, I can't just move on. So I think he decides he needs to kidnap baby Cable. Baby Cable is given some of Deadpool's blah 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 blood. I think he extracts something and gives it to him, and it kind of makes him like Cable is now. He starts becoming super powerful with his telekinetic powers, and that allows... Actually, I don't think they're allowed to escape. For some reason, I think Deadpool tries to body slide, and it's not working. So somehow they get out of there eventually. But Cable's, little baby Cable's with him, and he can start talking already. He gave them Deadpool's stuff to start advancing and accelerating his age. So he's already walking after a little while. He's already moving heavy, giant things. Eventually, something's going on with Deadpool. Deadpool is still programmed to kill Cable by Black Box, and so they need to stop him, restrain him. Actually, he ends up shooting himself because he knows what he's doing isn't what he wants to be doing. So they restrain him, and they gotta figure it out. Cable is willing to take all the stuff from the Black Box Infonet, or it's all the stored memories and stuff, so that he can use his telepathic powers to save Deadpool, even though that might drain him of his powers that he just got back once again. So he does it. He saves Deadpool. They head off to find Black Box, but it turns out it's just an empty shell. And wherever Black Box actually is, we're not sure. So it ends up being one of those situations. And at the end of it, Deadpool says, okay, now that we're back on good terms and everything, we need to go to a road trip to some place that I hear is awesome. Why would the name lie? But let's go one more issue. Alright. Let's go to, number 19. Okay, so we should really cover this one, even though I kind of wish that this was in the this issue was in the back of the past volume, but whatever. We have Cable, who's about 17 now, rapidly aging, but this whole issue is them telling kind of bar stories, talking about their past, and each of their stories seems more and more like it's going to be one thing, and then of course it turns out to be another. Deadpool talking about the death of his father, and he keeps saying stuff like he got what he deserved or he had it coming, and we see, someone has a gun that aimed at him and shot him, kind of thing. And there's this, of course, implication throughout the entire issue as Cable is finally aging and catching up and losing his telepathic powers once again. There's this thought that's like, shit, did Deadpool kill his own father? And eventually, I think, it keeps showing that shot, but then it shows that shot from another angle, and we see it was actually a friend of his that had done it, and not him, and he was mad at his friend. And then another thing with Cable, where we had thought he had done this horrible thing, but he was able to escape and someone else. So it was really kind of an interesting, touching thing, and by the end of it, Cable has almost reached the age that he's supposed to. And that was just Deadpool and Cable's fun little adventure in Intercourse, Pennsylvania. So those 9 issues that we just covered kind of mark an end of a certain era in the Deadpool saga, or the Cable Deadpool saga. And at this point, sort of the Cable doesn't have his powers anymore. He still has Providence. He and Deadpool are in good terms. And as the story progresses, we just get to see where that goes next time.
Thank you for watching, and as always, stay cuddly.
Alright, issue 20. We're introduced to the bad girls. Deadpool is surfing TV when he gets a task to steal a computer virus. But the bad girls are already there to steal it, and they want it bad. It's already been stolen, though, and they're left with their pants down. So, the cops show up, Deadpool finds out who really stole it, and it turns out to be Weasel. Before he can explain anything, Luke Cage and Iron Fist show up. Issue 21. They start fighting. Weasel runs away. Cable crashes the party. All while the bad girls are surveying the area. They catch up with Weasel and decide to have a little chat. But Cable explains the exposition-y information a little bit better. But they find out that the cat is working for Black Box. Issue 22. Cat is working with Black Box, and Cable and Deadpool spar while Cable explains a bunch more technical jargon. They find his whereabouts and meet up with 2 people that Deadpool definitely killed way back in the Circle Chase. Cable and Deadpool are trapped by Black Box in the Infonet. And Senkui, the cat, has a cup of tea with the bad girls, and they find out that they were hired by the same person. Cable escapes and destroys Black Box's shell, only to be left with one of the cheesiest, most overused cliffhangers in comic book history. Issue 23. It turns out it's Comcast that was controlling Black Box. They fight, and he brings Cable into the Infonet to tell his really cheesy emo backstory. And then, Senkui and the bad girls join the battle with the clones, and they battle in the Infonet. The cat destroys the clones, and Cable destroys Comcast, giving him the powers of the entire internet and Infonet, which basically replicates his telepathic powers that he used to have. Issue 24. Deadpool is fighting military ops to find out about a secret project involving some gravitational force field. His connection is a reporter who just so happens to be working with Peter Parker. Deadpool promptly throws Peter Parker off a bridge, not knowing that he's Spider-Man. Spider-Man shows up and they have an all-out brawl, and it's actually pretty cool. Until his contact gets a message from Cable letting him know to let Deadpool go. They stop the evil villain, and Cable now has the power of that gravitational device. But what will he use it for? Issue 25. Captain America is tasked by S.H.I.E.L.D. to spy on Cable's island of Providence. However, he ends up enjoying himself, painting murals and laughing for the first time in years. He does catch eyes with Cable at one point, and later the two of them meet. And of course, as superheroes, they battle. But we learn that Cable has used that gravitational device to recreate his former telekinetic powers. So basically now he has both his telekinesis and telepathy back. He tells Captain America of the future in which he actually used his shield to rally the troops and win a battle. The two of them reconcile, and Cable shares his vision of the future. Captain America stays in Providence for a few more days, finishing up his mural. Issue 26. We see Cable in the past, fighting an army and putting a bullet in the head of Apocalypse. But he's left some of his blood with this bearded fellow. Flash forward to the future. The team is trying to track down Cable, but he's in the past right now. They track him down to this location and are faced with a bunch of temple demons. They fight because it's a comic book, and they are met face to face with Cable and a familiar bearded friend. Issue 27, Born Again Part 2 with Eyes Open. In this somewhat boring issue, we find out that Cable's techno-organic virus was what actually made Apocalypse able to resurrect. And we find him now in a chamber filled with blood, getting ready. Cable explains a bunch of gobbledygook about why he's keeping him alive. Deadpool just starts shooting. Cable still, for some reason, by the end of this, decides to leave him alive for some weird explanation about humankind needing to have a strong enemy in order for us to be strong. It's really not one of their stronger issues. Issue 28, The Domino Principle. In this issue, from the perspective almost entirely of Domino's narration, we find she's trying to stop a tyrannical leader. And Deadpool has teamed up with the Resistance fighters. Domino doesn't like this, and she and Deadpool begin to fight. However, Deadpool has the Resistance in his pocket. They decide to team up together to assassinate this tyrannical leader, but the Resistance suggestion of who should rule? Cable, of course. Issue 29, The Domino Principle, Part 2, The Politics of Fear. Cable offers his usual vision of peace and prosperity, and they all agree to lay down their arms. Domino begins to wonder what she has done. Cable tasks Deadpool with looking up the Resistance leader because he's actually been dead for weeks. Turns out it was really Citizen V, some really lame hero that I've never heard of. Domino has her doubts and Cable is worried. Citizen V is finally punched hard enough in the face by Deadpool to be defeated, and Domino eventually decides to show her true colors and her true beliefs by aiming a gun at Cable. At least we know where her heart actually lies. And sadly, Cable is left wondering if his vision for the future is truly correct. So yeah, these 10 issues that we covered are pretty decent. The four-parter is interesting, and I like that throughout the course of 10 issues, we basically have Cable starting off having lost his powers and basically getting all of the same powers back, both his telepathy and his telekinesis, just by very different means. So that was kind of cool that they do it through a sciencey way. The Captain America issue was great. Did not care too much for the two-parter about Apocalypse. It seemed really convoluted, and it seemed like he didn't even have a real reason as to why he was doing that. So that was a bit messed up. And but then we start a whole new sort of storyline. So he's running Providence, and now he's running this country of Rumekistan. So we'll find out, is he going to be a good leader? Is he going to screw everything up? And what's coming in the future of Cable and Deadpool? You'll have to wait till next time, though.
Thank you for watching, and as always, stay cuddly.
So begins the Marvel Civil War event version of Cable and Deadpool, issue 30. Deadpool is fighting the Great Lakes Avengers because he thinks they haven't registered. Turns out they have. He is asked by the government to do this professionally. He agrees because he always wants to be a merc. He tells this to Cable, not knowing what Cable's side in the issue is. Cable has a heart-to-heart once again with Captain America. Deadpool spies on him and steals the identification of all the new aliases of superheroes. He uses this to track down Daredevil, and they have an all-out brawl in a warehouse. But it turns out it could be a trap. Issue 31. It was indeed a trap, and they begin fighting more and more as Deadpool takes on multiple superheroes. Cable shows up to explain his position, and they tie Deadpool up so that they can do a bunch of other issues of different comics that were happening at around this time. He shows up later, and they go to meet the president to explain about the future and how this becomes a horrible police state full of superheroes, and the president begins to send in his men so that they can fight Cable. He stops them non-violently, and the president tasks Deadpool with shooting and killing Cable. Issue 32. Deadpool shoots at Cable, and they begin to fight. They still can't seem to convince the president that what they're doing is right. And Cable and Deadpool body slide out of this place and show up instead at the One World Church, where the real fight begins. The two of them battle, and eventually Deadpool is tied up once again. Cable publicly humiliates him by getting him to admit things that he didn't know were on camera. He's given the opportunity to shoot Cable, and he decides not to shoot. But the two of them will probably not be the same again after this, the Marvel Civil War event. Issue 33. There is an explosion in the island of Providence, and it may be sabotage. Meanwhile, Six-Pack is heading to Rumekistan, the country that Cable is the current president of, and they also intend on sabotaging that place. Cable realizes that there's probably going to be a double hit, and instead of taking a plane, he body slides with Deadpool, and the two of them team up to stop Six-Pack. Why Six-Pack is doing this is kind of a bit insane. He faces off with them, realizing, wait, there's only 5 of them. Where's the 6th? Surprise, it's Deadpool. Looks like their war wasn't so civil. Issue 34. Cable reminisces on happier times, and Domino has doubts as to whether or not knocking out the power of an entire country just because a guy really seemed hopeful is a good idea. Guess what? It's not. Meanwhile, the people of the country are carrying Cable around in a savior-like fashion, and he reroutes the entire power through his gravitational force, bringing everyone back together in peace and harmony, knocking out Six-Pack, and publicly humiliating Deadpool by revealing on national television that he was the one that blew up Providence. It ends with Deadpool once again staring at television, sitting on his couch, only this time it's a bit sad. One happy ending, Cable and Domino reunite. Issue 35. Cable has given Deadpool something that makes him feel guilty for all of his past crimes, and he begins seeing visions everywhere he goes. Meanwhile, Cable is sparring with Domino, and Mrs. Merriweather seems a tad jealous. Deadpool is off the rails, going insane, hallucinating from all of his guilt and all of his past crimes, that he lashes out and Cable finally has to intervene. He tells him that he might have been slightly involved in influencing these thoughts, but for the most part, these thoughts are his own. The two of them argue, and it looks like they might not be friends anymore. It ends with Deadpool sitting in his apartment staring at television, but this time, there's a certain somber tone to it. Alright. Issue number 36. Deadpool asks Blind Al and Weasel what they think of him. He hasn't been able to get a merc job, so he saves and rescues Taskmaster for the purpose of fighting Taskmaster to prove that he is a really good, awesome mercenary. Taskmaster agrees. Weasel kidnaps a group of spectators, and the two of them have an all-out brawl. Deadpool thinking that Taskmaster is going easy on him, but Deadpool's actually pretty damn good. He asks the group of people what they think of him, and they say, "We already know you're a good fighter. We hate you because you're unprofessional and just all-around horrible." Meanwhile, Rhino breaks out, and Deadpool realizes, maybe I can prove myself by being a hero. Issue 37. Deadpool wakes up to find himself shrunken tiny, and it turns out that this has all been done by Rhino as payback for when he made Rhino into a keychain. He brings him to a bar full of supervillains, and they take turns dunking him in the toilet and shooting at him. One of the bullets sets him free, and it's an all-out brawl as Tiny Deadpool takes on all these villains in a bar. He tells Rhino that he was humiliated, and Rhino tells him, that's all I really wanted. But he still beats up Rhino and captures him anyways, for the publicity. The only problem is, he's still teeny tiny. Issue 38. It's in the genes. We open with Alex Hayden, aka Agent X, infiltrating Hydra. Only he gets captured. And Deadpool enjoys the view as Sandy and Outlaw tell him they need his help to save them. He heads over to the Hydra facilities, steals the card and person of Bob from Hydra, and uses him to infiltrate the base, where they find that Alex Hayden has been weakened with a condition that causes him to constantly need to eat, and it turns out it may be irreversible. Deadpool gets some Pime particles, it turns big again, kicks ass, takes Alex home with a forklift, only to find out that Sandy and Outlaw have been kidnapped by T-Ray. Seriously, more T-Ray. Issue 39. Seriously, more T-Ray. Deadpool tries to track him down, and they find that he's in a farmhouse where he's kept Sandy and Outlaw hostage. He brings Bob from Hydra along. T-Ray and him battle, but argue more than anything. T-Ray wishes more people hated him and doesn't understand why they don't. Deadpool exclaims that he knows who he is. They fight, and he stabs him in the head with his katana, not killing him, but incapacitating him in some manner. Alex Hayden is still fired, and that's how we end this week's episode. So, I have kind of mixed feelings about the 10 issues that we covered in today's episode. I mean, it was kind of cool to see how Cable and Deadpool were involved in the Marvel Civil War thing. Actually, Cable is very heavily involved, a very important role in that. But it did mean the parting of their ties, and there were a couple issues that seemed a little meaningless. Well, I did kind of like that one where he had gone a little bit insane, and that did have one of my favorite fourth wall breaks. But and then we got into more silly Deadpool-y stuff. But I don't know, I think it slightly bums me out that it's Cable and Deadpool, and they play so well together because one's sort of very serious and one's very silly. And the fact that they're sort of parting ways at this point, I don't know, it's something that when you have that kind of emotional investment, it makes you feel a bit bummed out. But we'll actually see a bit more as the series becomes even more Deadpool heavy in the last 11 issues. But that's for next time.
Thank you for watching, and as always, stay cuddly.
So begins the beginning of the end, beginnings, issue 40, Fractured Part 1, but it's actually Part 2 of some other series, which is why it starts right in the middle with Cable and the X-Men fighting Hecatomb, a beast that is consuming the minds of everyone on Providence, as people scramble together to stop it, to save the lives of the X-Men and save the entire continent. Deadpool is playing cards and losing. The fight continues as constantly people are giving Cable advice on what he should do until he says enough. He knows what he needs to do, and he heads forward until X-Men Supernovas continues the story, which is not at all included in this volume, and I do not own it. Issue 41. Hecatomb was destroyed in a completely different comic book. But it turns out that the island will sink, and Irene Merriweather was captured. Creed is about to destroy her. Domino goes to save Irene Merriweather, and it looks like a task too hard to handle. So Deadpool shows up and just keeps firing his gun non-stop, giving time for them to escape. Cable is trying to figure out what he needs to do. He evacuates everyone, and he needs to go find data that's on the island and destroy it. The story is continued in X-Men Marauders, which is also not included in this volume. Issue 42. We begin with the action that must have happened at the end of X-Men Marauders. The island is done for, but Cable still needs all that data. He and Deadpool team up. Cable going after the data faces Gambit, and Deadpool faces Seniaka, someone I've never heard of, which is why he defeats him so quickly. Sunfire joins the fight against Cable. Cable knows that he needs to destroy that data, and he realizes that the only way to do it is to sacrifice himself and the entire island. It ends sadly with Deadpool sitting on his couch, watching TV. Issue 43. Wolverine is mad at Hydra. Cable is dead for reals, yo. And Cyclops wants Agency X to go infiltrate Hydra. They kind of forgot that they left Weasel at Hydra, and Weasel has been taking over creating new technology for them. His latest invention, a suit he calls the Penetrator, which allows him to teleport anywhere he wants. Wolverine cuts off Deadpool's head and has his eyes set on Weasel now. Issue 44. Wolverine goes after Weasel, but of course he can teleport away with his new Penetrator armor. And he stylishly kills tons of members of Hydra in the process. Once Deadpool is revived by Bob from Hydra, he begins to try to reason with Wolverine, which is not a good idea. But he knows that Weasel would never betray him, even though it really seems like Weasel has. Turns out, it was all part of the plan, and Weasel destroys all the members of Hydra. Deadpool meets up with Cyclops once more, and they both kind of thank each other. Unfortunately, at the very end, Weasel's suit malfunctions, and they disappear. Issue 45. It turns out they disappeared to World War II, where Captain America is fighting the Nazis. Bob from Hydra and Deadpool team up with Captain America and Bucky, who seem to keep forgetting who they are, and it must have something to do with this time travel. Meanwhile, at Agency X, Weasel is trying to figure out exactly how to get them back. They battle a Nazi doctor who's actually a monster, and they don't really do it non-violently. At the very end, they are teleported somewhere, but it's not back to their world. Meanwhile, the Fantastic Four shows up to ask some questions. Issue 46, Zombie Variant Cover. They did travel forward through time, but only a couple decades to meet up with the classic Fantastic Four. Meanwhile, the modern one is being sent back in time by Weasel to go find Deadpool and Bob from Hydra. They whirlwind around through time, but miss them just as they're heading back forward through time. Eventually, everything crashes together and they do end up in the correct timeline. They're invited to poker, just not Deadpool, Weasel, and Bob from Hydra. Sad and heartbroken, they eventually find out that they have a job, offered by Stephen Strange. Issue 47. So begins a two-parter I don't really care about. As Deadpool and Bob from Hydra are sent from dimension to dimension to kill off monsters, aliens, creatures, without really any explanation as to why. Why does this have anything to do with them? And it turns out it has everything to do with something that Deadpool did many issues ago. He didn't properly kill T-Ray, and the Black Mage's power spread throughout all the different multiverses. So he pulls the sword out, but unfortunately, that may be bad news for him. Issue 48, which I also don't care about. They're stuck in some nether realm where T-Ray is still alive and really powerful, and it's assumed that for some reason Deadpool might not have a soul, so his soul is in T-Ray now, and it ends with some weird thing of Dr. Stephen Strange saying maybe they both have to share a soul, but maybe Deadpool has a soul after all, and it's really convoluted and stupid, as is everything involving T-Ray. My God, I hate those. Issue 49. Deadpool and Agent X are fighting, as per usual. Irene Merriweather tasks them to go to the Savage Land. They say hello to Kazar. While there, it turns out Brainchild is using some magnetic polarity device to do some bad things. The dinosaurs are about to attack them, but they send them to Genosha. But it turns out that they sent them to the Genosha Embassy in Manhattan. Dinosaurs wreak havoc on Manhattan, and in the brawl, the Venom symbiote, or symbiote, gets free, and we get some Venom T-Rexes and Triceratops. Oh yeah. In the final 50th issue of Cable and Deadpool, which hasn't really had Cable in it for about 8 issues, we see so many heroes fighting Venom dinosaurs, including Spider-Man. Alex Hayden decides to sit it out. A Venom T-Rex is attacking. Ms. Marvel shows up. The Fantastic Four take party and join in. Everyone fights together. And yes, even Alex Hayden decides to help out as heavy as he can. Deadpool takes things seriously because he enjoys this teamwork. He gets a message from the future that this device can destroy the symbiote, or symbiote, if you will. He allows a T-Rex Venom symbiote to try to take control of him so quickly, and then stabs himself in the eye with the device, destroying the Venom virus. The comic ends with Deadpool sitting on his couch watching TV, and slowly, more and more of his friends gather beside him. It's just as it began, but this time, it's not alone. So yeah, I really like this series. I hated the T-Ray stuff, but I always hate the T-Ray stuff. But that was a great issue to go out on, and it was kind of funny that Deadpool kept joking. I'm sure they'll bring Cable back. I'm sure they're just waiting for a good crossover, and they never really did bring him back. He just got that message, which just says from the future. It doesn't actually say that it's from Cable, but no, I thought that was kind of a touching ending, that it came full circle and has the couch and the TV. This volume does include the special that they had, which was the Great Lakes Avengers stuff, and it's just a series of like short little 7-page comics. I think there's one where he goes on a date with Big Bertha, and but I think she shows up in her whatever, date with Destiny, yeah. Shows up in her skinny form, and he shows up kind of as his superhero form, so he was a little bummed out by that because he only liked her in her superhero form. But no, it was good, but at the same time, I feel like I almost missed Cable for a while, and but it was again, like I've said a couple times, it's one of my favorite series, and it was a pleasure to reread this, to record this web series. So join us next time for
Thank you for watching, and as always, stay cuddly.